Alright, we made the videos on the first two temperaments of the SJs, the Guardians, the Traditionalists, and the SPs, who are the Artisan, Freedom-Based. Both of these are concrete people, the concrete temperaments that talk about what is, not exactly what if. So we're going to go over the NTs, which is my temperament, which is the first of the abstracts, and we're going to get into the more unbalanced, weird people on the planet. Now, NTs are about 15% of the planet. I'm an ENTP. I want to argue that's probably the most common of us four. Um, Probably INTP being second, and then ENTJ, then INTJ. INTJ being very rare. They say that INFJ is the most rare. I argue that INTJ is more rare. A lot of the INTJs are actually ENTPs who are just like fucked up. And vice versa. Most of the INFJs, they claim to be INFJs, are really INFPs who are also screwed up, or screwed up ISFJs for that matter. Um, of the NT temperaments, what does this mean? We means we are abstract. Abstract thinkers do not dwell in the world of what is. We dwell in the world of what if. And so sometimes being in the moment or in the past or dwelling about what's going on right now can be very difficult for us because we're always in the future. And so the future thinkers are always looking about probabilities, systems, analytics, things like that, and looking at what may happen essentially. Let's go over a couple things more abstract. People talk about concepts, pattern recognition, implications, symbols, hidden meaning, possibilities, intentions. Where are we going? Let's find pathways, what may or might not be, examples, parables, ideas, understanding meaning, introspection, asking questions, intuition, and planning what is going to happen, what is the potential. And so they're just kind of rambling off about of what if in this sense, and with the NTs it's more of a systematic approach to what if, more and not like the NFs who are more ideologically focused, more on making the world a better place by morals and ethics and improving things for everybody in that sense, while the NTs are more or less wanting about the future, possibly making a better place, or you know, generally by via technology is the stereotype. You think of people like Steve Jobs, who's an ENTP, or like Wozniak's INTP, or um, um, Tim Cook is an ENTJ. Um, Zuckerberg is an INTJ, and so you see these types, who kind of like foresaw the future about where things were going, and they banked really high on that and made a lot of cash, which is kind of intimidating to NTs such as myself who don't exactly have a lot of money or, I guess, a lot of worldly success in that sense. But what else about these people? So we have abstracts. We talk about what if, what's the probabilities, and things like that. Many times we live in the clouds and daydreaming and thinking about things and not really here in reality like all the other concretes. So people are like saying, "What the hell is this guy's problem?" I think these guys are autistic. A lot of things like that, and then concrete society wants to put us on pills and try to make us normal. That's typically what happens with that. And the reason why is because we're systematic and we're pragmatic. And so, being the fact that we're pragmatic means we don't ask for permission. We ask for forgiveness if needed. And then we're finding out systems. And so many times you can pinpoint an NT because NTs can pinpoint a system of anything and then exploit it in a way. And so that's why you see a lot of ENTJs, INTJs getting involved in politics, such as Donald Trump is an ENTJ, Hillary Clinton INTJ, Yang INTJ, and such and such. Um, Typically, NTPs don't really want to get involved in politics. It's not really our thing. That's more of an FITE thing of wanting to get involved and having that status and people praising you and loving you and stuff like that. And accomplishments are more important to them. So systematic things, every single one of the NTs are at least double systematic, so they at least have two sides of their minds that are systematic. And so an ENTP such as myself are triple systematic, and so the first thing I do when I enter into a new situation is try to figure out what the system is running the household. And typically speaking, I'm memorizing patterns as soon as I walk in, and I kind of figure out what people are going to do before they do it. So I memorize behaviors, and when I talk about people like anything you say to me is going to be memorized and I will use it in a future argument, possibly when you were trying to backtrack of what you said you were going to do and then what you were going to do and what I think you're going to do. And so that's kind of how NTs are. Because we're pragmatic, we're not as liked as much as the NS. NFs are more affiliative, and so they kind of fit in a little bit better. And so we're kind of like the black sheep. Let's go over why we're weird. If you look and remember the SJs and the SPs, SJs have are systematic and affiliative, and then right directly into their shadow, they also have interest base right there, and so they have all three um, different styles of temperaments right there to their access, and so they are more balanced people. SP is the same story. They're interest based and pragmatic, and then they have access to being affiliative and systematic too, right there. So they're more balanced people. SJs, they have access to all four. I said three earlier. Apologize for that. While NTs, for that matter, are not. They usually just have two, and so we're very unbalanced people. We're very systematic and we're very pragmatic, and not a whole lot of affiliative and not a whole lot of interests. Now you can argue my third side of my mind is the ISFJ, which is my affiliative nature, but that is takes away. I have no direct connection with any kind of interest. What's in it for me? What's in it for other people? In this case, we usually struggle with finding why people like certain things. Why do they do what they do? Um, we don't really care about why. We would care about what they're going to do. And so, if I'm memorizing information and data points and different analytics of different people's behaviors and such as things like that, it's not from a standpoint of what I'm going to get out of it or what are they going to get out. I really don't give a shit. It's really just about what they're going to do and if I'm right or wrong, And so because of this, people kind of like, well, Matt, what are you interested in? I don't really know. I like information, and I'm interested in this now, but I probably won't be in 5 years. And so that's kind of how ENTPs are, and NTs for that matter. Now, the NTJs have interests in their third side of their mind, but then they don't have no affiliative. And these guys are triple pragmatic, and so NTJs love to break the law, and they really are kind of like the bad boys in society. As you can see, this with Donald Trump as the president, kind of just does whatever the fuck he wants. Uh, and the same thing would have been the case for Hillary Clinton, who's an INTJ, who's triple pragmatic as well. She would have done whatever the fuck she wanted and then maybe asked for permission or forgiveness later. And so that's kind of how we are. And so they ruffle a lot of feathers when we get in positions of any kind of authority and power like that. People argue that Hitler was an ENTJ and he understood the systems in that matter and, was triple pragmatic as well and didn't really follow the affiliative in this matter. So what are NTs good for? NTs are good for innovating. They're good for creating new things like iPhones, Apples, computers, technology. Some can argue that we're going to ruin the planet with AI or with, you know, um, singularity and things like that. Uh, this is probably all true and probably is going to happen. And so, what is an NT not though? An NT is not a robot. Many people say that we can't feel, we're unethical or immoral people, and need to be put in, in homes and monitored because we scare the affiliative types. Uh, this isn't the case. Actually, people in the NTs are actually quite emotional. It's just that we're retarded on one side. And so myself being an ENTP, I have FE, but I don't have any FI. And so this can pose some problems that I can be an ethical person, but I'm amoral myself. And so depending on who I'm around is how I would define right or wrong, because I don't really think in right or wrong. I think in true and false. And so in this case, also with the NTJs, they are moral people, but they're unethical. And so people accuse Donald Trump of not having any ethics. That's true. He doesn't. He's an ENTJ. ENTJs don't have ethics. ENTJs are moral people, and so his moral code of right and wrong comes from himself. And so he decides what's right and wrong. That's how FI works. It's a personal decision and a personal philosophy, essentially. And this is what makes the NTJs actually feelers, not really thinkers, although they probably jump all over me for that because they're highly intelligent people. but their internal driving force is feeling, and that is their internal force because their thinking process is external, which is from other people and other sources. But their driving force is their FI, which is their emotional side. And so NTJs can be very sensitive due to the fact that they have the FI inferior, FI child, which are both be very sensitive. And so even though they might come across as this callous, robotic man or woman, typically speaking, that's not the case, and they're actually very sensitive people. Myself, I can get hurt pretty easily when I'm around other people who are hurting. My feelings are kind of irrelevant, but I care about other people's feelings when I'm around them. So when I go into a hospital and someone is sick in the hospital or hurt from injury or some sort, I usually will cry with them, hold their hand, and have a bunch of empathy. But as soon as I leave that room, that goes away. And then I'm kind of go out by my day. And that's kind of how FE works. It's feeling other people's feelings, not necessarily your own. And that's why we struggle with sympathy, because sympathy is FI. Sympathy is feelings about on behalf of other people, and so you had to feel them first to begin with, and then collect the data with your TE, and then you understand how they're feeling, and then you have sympathy for them. ENTPs, INTPs do not have sympathy, and we expect people to get over things and stop repeating the same shit over and over again. This can come across and make us calls robotic and things like that. Now, how do NT relationships work? NTs, typically speaking, their golden pair and silver pair are going to be NTs as well. This is contrary to SJs and SPs who need to correlate with each other. And so the SJs will create a systematic, affiliative approach to the relationship, and the SPs are going to be a pragmatic, but they're going to be an interest in their best interest to be with the SJ. While NT on NT relationships are kind of like contracts. I'm currently dating an ENTJ, and it's a very kind of methodical relationship where we kind of just like wing it as we go because we're both pragmatic and we don't have any kind of affiliative notion of how our relationship should be. It's just our relationship, and there's no really outside sources influencing and how it's ran. And so NT relationships are kind of cool like that because they're both pragmatic, they're both systematic, and so it's kind of like more like some would call it almost robotic and kind of like a convenience versus more of the of high emotional compatibility that other relationships seem to have. And so so we correlate what's going on with NTs. Okay, we're not autistic. Okay, we're just retarded in one side of the emotional spectrum. Okay, we either are moral or we're ethical, but we're not both. So the NTPs are not going to understand morality, and the NTJs are not going to understand ethics. Okay, that's why they need to correlate with each other. In my relationship, for instance, my boyfriend brings in the morals, I bring in the ethics, and we kind of attack each other and try to fix each other with both sides of the spectrums of how emotional right and wrong there are. And so these are my thoughts on NTs and their role in the world.